Hello, my name is Crazy Owl, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can create really interesting color palettes in your Minecraft builds. Before we get into the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, but without further ado, let's get right into the build. So, the first thing I'm going to tell you about in terms of block palette is style, and I actually created 3 example builds before starting the video. So this one's in more of a medieval style. The terraforming and decorations doesn't really matter for this video specifically, but it does add a little bit of atmosphere to the build. And this build uses dark oak for the outline of the roof and the structure itself, spruce and oak logs for the walls, and then bricks and terracotta for the roof. And this is a very medieval palette. You could have used some sort of stone as a foundation as well, but this works especially for a smaller build. And for medieval and rustic builds, you should definitely use a lot of wood. So they have like planks, they have logs, all sorts of stuff. For medieval builds, you can also use different types of rocks, black stone, deep slate, stone, andesite, anything in that range. For a sort of accent block, you can use terracottas, but I'll get more into that later. For a modern style, which is a different whole category, modern and medieval are about as different as you can get, you want to use clean and smooth blocks, lots of concrete, maybe some wood planks, maybe some terracotta. So this build, I used birch. I would not recommend using more than one type of wood because you don't really want the wood to be the focus of it. So I made this house using birch wood and then also white and dark gray concrete, which created a very clean sort of look, which the shape helped with that, but it's really the colors. If I would have done this with birch wood, dark oak wood, and like logs or something, it would not look the same. Now, that's not saying you can't create modern houses with wood, but if you want to go with the very stereotypical but still nice modern look, you definitely want some sort of concrete. And this third style is more suburban, though it doesn't look exactly how I'd planned it to, but I used bricks and terracotta and a quartz roof for this. I definitely think the white roof was an interesting choice on my part. You could have definitely done something different, but bricks and terracotta are great blocks for suburban style builds because bricks are actually really common in a lot of places, and terracotta, even though it's not perfect, it's the closest we can get to a sort of like paneled siding, especially colors like the light gray terracotta and the yellow terracotta. I see colors quite similar to this in real life all the time. Another thing you want to think about is contrast, and this is a little bit of a less... The next thing to think about and consider in your block palette is contrast, and this is less simple than it is with style, because there's a very fine line over what's too similar and what's fine. For example, oak and spruce wood, or spruce and dark oak wood, are somewhat similar, but they work completely fine in builds. If you had these 2 blocks as your main blocks for a build, it would look completely fine. But where it gets a little too similar, in my opinion, is if your whole build was made using these 3 different blocks. Now, you can mix these 3 together to create some more variation in one part of a build. You could definitely use these 3 for the walls or the roof of your build, for example. But like, if you used one of these for the walls and one for the support beams, it would look a little boring. So you want to have some different levels of brightness and maybe even value. Another thing I recommend with contrast is to limit strange looking blocks. So maybe you want some interest in your build, so you use this raw gold block. Maybe you want some interest and you find a spot for amethyst, or you find a spot for, I don't know, some redstone ore, because you could probably find a way to put all 3 of these blocks into a build, though these 2 I would not use in larger amounts. But I would not recommend using all 3 of these in one build. It would look very weird and definitely would not be something that's pleasing to look at. So just limit any blocks that use super bright colors or super odd textures, anything like that, or even like warped stem. That's a sort of strange texture. If you're building something using lots of nether blocks, you can use some of this, but don't make all of the walls out of this color. It will hurt your eyes. The next thing I'd like to look at is biome, and biome, similar to contrast, is not something that has concrete rules. For example, you can build the exact same build in a spruce biome, and a plains biome, and a forest biome, and they will all look fine. Where biome really comes into play is with biomes that have very specific color palettes. Deserts or mesas, for example. In a desert, it will look sort of out of place to see a build like this medieval build right here. Instead, for those, you might want to go with a more western style in a mesa, or maybe a more adobe or even just pretty basic desert-y style in the desert, using like sandstone and some terracotta and maybe a little bit of wood, but sparingly. Or like a modern house like this would look really weird and out of place on a mushroom island. In fact, if you're going to create modern houses or even suburban houses, I'd recommend sort of building the environment around it. You don't have to completely replace everything, but I'd make some custom trees and use them sparingly. So if you're building in a forest, don't leave all the trees there and just build houses in the plain spots, because in cities where suburban or modern houses are actually found, it's not a full forest. Especially with the modern houses, there won't be that much grass space, or the yards won't be that large. Another important thing to consider with biome is blocks that are specific to the biome. And we did touch on that before with sandstone, but don't use sandstone in large amounts unless it is in the desert. You can use it in smaller amounts in like suburban or maybe modern homes, but don't make your entire build around it. And with wood blocks, even though you can use any of them in any biome, many of them tend to look better in the biome where they come from. So oak wood, I find that in plains biomes, oak and birch wood look very good compared to the color of the grass and the trees. Meanwhile, darker blocks look better in spruce and dark oak biomes. This is obviously way less important, and as long as the build looks nice, you can put it wherever you want. But if you want to build a city that uses the same color palette on almost every build, I'd recommend looking for the biome that matches that. The fourth tip that I'd like to give is related to block texture. And this one, you'll get many conflicting opinions on, because color matters a whole lot more than texture does in this type of video or build even. So if you're mixing up these 3 blocks because the colors look nice together, which honestly they do, if you were going to build something out of this, I'd pick one main block and then add some of this in there to add some texture. But certain blocks, even if they have similar-ish colors, they don't have textures that go well together. For example, I would not recommend mixing amethyst and purple block. If they were just plain colors, they wouldn't look that bad mixed together. They even have some similar tones in the brighter parts of the amethyst. But neither of these have very simple textures, and they would look very strange, and they would clash against each other because the textures don't match, as well as the fact that the color is very bright and would have to be used sparingly. Another example of this is emerald and slime. Emerald is extremely bright and has this very loud square pattern, and slime is see-through. Though these blocks are kind of similar in color, you would not want to see these, even if it perfectly fit the theme of the build. There are plenty more examples of this. Don't mix several blocks with crazy texture. If you're going to use this raw gold block, don't also mix it with honeycomb, and also mix it with yellow glazed terracotta. This will just look crazy. No one needs to look at that. My eyes hurt just thinking about it. Texture is less of a specific thing, as I said. You just kind of have to gauge whether it looks terrible or good or okay, and decide from there whether you want to keep what you have or use a different block palette. And I'd just like to remind you all that Minecraft builds are not permanent. If you don't like the way something looks, you can take it out and switch it. If it's a really hard, large build, make sure to test out your blocks in either a smaller version or just a small portion of the build to make sure they look good together before you go full-on mega base, because you don't want to have to redo that. Or in Java, there's actually probably commands you can use to replace blocks, but I don't know if there are any in Bedrock. But that is actually going to be all for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It means the world to me. Anyways, thanks for watching, and have a great day.